In August 1978, a medical photographer named Janet Parker was working on the floor above a smallpox laboratory in Birmingham, England. By September, she was dead. Now here's the strange part. By 1978, smallpox was finished. The last natural case on earth had been a hospital cook in Somalia the year before. The disease was gone from the world and it still killed her. How can something be gone and still kill you? Because gone is not one word, it is four: control, elimination, eradication, and extinction. People use them as if they mean the same thing. They do not. They are four rungs of a ladder. Only one of them lets you stop climbing, and as you are about to see, you can also fall back down. Hello, my name is Dr. Sandeep Das and welcome to Swasthgyan Digital. Today, I'll do a deep dive on the three important concepts of epidemiology: control, elimination, and eradication. These aren't vibes. Somebody sat down and defined them. In 1997, at a workshop in Berlin called Dahlem, epidemiologists agreed a formal hierarchy written up by Bill Dordell in the Bulletin of the World Health Organization. Number one is control. You push the disease down to a level you can live with. The germ is still out there, but you keep pushing. Number two, elimination. Transmission stops, but only in a defined area. The germ exists elsewhere, so you still guard the door. Number three, eradication. Worldwide incidence is permanently zero. The germ is gone from the nature, and here is the reward. You can stop the program and stop the vaccine. And number four, extinction. Gone from nature and from every laboratory freezer on earth. Now a confession before we go further. Open a Dictionary of Epidemiology, the standard reference, the one on every epidemiologist's shelf, and it defines elimination as reduction of transmission to a predetermined very low level. Dahlem says zero. Those are not the same sentence. So if you ever have felt these words were slippery, you were right. Even the reference books don't fully agree. In 2004, a group of researchers published a paper practically begging the field to use the three words consistently. That paper had to exist. Sit with that. But before any of that, somebody has to decide the disease is worth fighting at all. No committee wakes up and picks a favorite. There are 5 questions. Number 1, how big is it? Cases, deaths, healthy years lost. Number 2, how bad is it? Severity, disability, and who it falls on. Number 3, have we got a tool that works? A disease you cannot touch isn't a program, it's a wish. Number 4, is it worth it? Cost per healthy year saved against everything else that money could buy. Every rupee spent here is a rupee not spent there. And the 5th, the one that actually decides. Does anyone care? Rabies kills around 59,000 people every year. Once symptoms start, it is essentially always fatal, and it is entirely preventable. We have had a vaccine since Louis Pasteur. Rabies passes questions 1 to 4 without breaking a sweat. It just keeps failing question number 5. That is not epidemiology, that is politics, and it is always in the room. Hold on to rabies. We will come back to it because there is also a biological reason we will never eradicate it, and you will see it in about 3 minutes. So, control. Your foot on a hose. The water is still in the pipe. You are just standing on it. Here is what happens when you take your foot off. Sri Lanka, 1963. A ferocious anti-malaria campaign had driven the country from around 90,000 cases down to 17. 17 in the whole country. It looks as if Sri Lanka had won. So in April, they stopped spraying. Cases creep back within months, and then they climb, then they run. By 1969, Sri Lanka had reported 537,000 cases of malaria, from 17 to more than 500,000 in 6 years. Nothing about the parasite had changed. Nothing about the mosquito had changed. The only thing that changed is that people had relaxed. That is control. Control is a grip, not a finish line. And keep that date, 1969, in your head. It comes back, and it is bigger than Sri Lanka. Now the part almost nobody explains, and it is the most important thing in this video. You do not need to vaccinate everybody. You never did. Because of herd immunity. If enough people around you are immune, the germ runs out of people to infect. It dies out before it reaches you. You are protected by other people's immunity without ever being vaccinated yourself. But herd immunity only works under conditions. Leon Gordis lists them. The germ must live in one host species. You must pass it directly from one person to person. Infection must produce solid immunity, not partial. And the population must mix reasonably randomly. Look at that first condition again. One host species. That is why rabies can never be eradicated. It doesn't just live in us. It lives in dogs, in bats, in raccoons. There is no coverage figure that saves you because the reservoir isn't human. Vaccinate every person on earth and rabies is still out there in the wildlife waiting. Now, how much is enough people? There is a number called R0. It is the number of people one infected person passes the disease to in a population with no immunity at all. And the fraction of the population you must make immune is 1 minus 1 over R0. That's it. That's the whole formula. Let's use it. Smallpox, R0 of about 5. 1 minus 1/5, 80%. Vaccinate 80% of the people and smallpox cannot sustain itself. 80% is hard, but 80% is achievable in the 1970s with jet injectors and jeeps and volunteers. Measles, R0 of about 20. 1 minus 1/20th is 95%. 80 versus 95, that gap, 15 percentage points is the entire difference between we did it in 1980 and never had to do it again, and we are still fighting this in 2026. Every anti-vaccine pocket, every missed child, every supply failure eats into that 95. Measles finds that gap and always finds that gap. Measles isn't hard because the vaccine is bad. The vaccine is superb. Measles is hard because the arithmetic is brutal. Now the word that causes the most trouble. Elimination means zero, but zero here in a defined area. The pathogen still exists elsewhere, so it can fly back in tomorrow and dawdle split it in two. Elimination of a disease is zero cases. Elimination of an infection is zero infections by the agent. A harder bar. You can carry an infection without being ill. Then the fine print. For most diseases, elimination doesn't mean zero at all. It means below a threshold WHO has decided small enough to stop being a public health problem. Leprosy, fewer than one case per 10,000 people. Lymphatic filariasis, microfilaria rate under 1%. Kala-azar, under 1 case per 10,000 per block. India declared leprosy eliminated in 2005. It has the threshold, a real achievement. And in 2024 to 25, India detected about 1 lakh new leprosy cases. More than half the world's leprosy is still ours. Both of those sentences are true at the same time. That's not a scandal, and it's not a lie. Eliminated as a public health problem is a statement about a rate, not about a disease being finished. Miss that and you will misread every health headline you will ever see. Eradication is the summit. Permanent. Worldwide, zero, and it's all or none. You cannot eradicate a disease in most places. That's just elimination with good PR. In the whole of human history, we have done it twice. Smallpox declared eradicated on the 8th of May 1980, a disease that killed an estimated 300 million people in the 20th century alone simply stopped existing. And rinderpest, a cattle plague in 2011. That's the list. Two are close. Polio, wild type 1 survives in exactly 2 countries, Afghanistan and Pakistan. And guinea worm, 3.5 million cases a year in 1986, in 2025, 10 on the entire planet. 10 cases and it still isn't finished, which should make you ask an obvious question. If you are down to 10, how do you know it's 10? How does anyone know a disease is gone? This is the chapter nobody makes, and it is where eradication actually lives or dies. Go back to the dictionary definition of eradication. Read it slowly. Termination of all transmission of infection by extermination of the infectious agent through surveillance and containment. Surveillance is not a footnote, it is inside the definition. Now here's the problem. 0 cases reported is not 0 cases. It might mean the disease is gone, or it might mean you stopped looking. And those two look identical on a graph. So the last mile of every eradication campaign is in medicine. It is detective work. You cannot wait for cases to walk into a clinic. You have to go out and hunt for the disease that you believe is no longer there. Smallpox made this easy. The rash was unmistakable. You could hand a villager a photograph and ask, "Have you seen this?" And they could answer. The campaign paid rewards for reporting a case. The diagnosis was the disease. Polio makes it brutal because for every child paralyzed by polio, roughly 200 people are infected and show nothing at all, almost no symptoms, silent and still spreading. So, you cannot account polio by counting paralyzed children. You'd miss the iceberg and see only the tip. Instead, the world does something that sounds insane as actually genius. It investigates every single case of sudden floppy paralysis in a child anywhere and from any cause and tests them all for poliovirus, chasing thousands of false alarms to make sure you never miss one real one. And then you wait. WHO certification requires 3 years of active aggressive searching with 0 cases found. Now 3 years of nobody calling, 3 years of looking hard and finding nothing. Now that's the expensive part. That's the last mile, and it's the part that gets cut first when funders get bored, which is exactly how you get a resurgence you don't see coming. Everything so far has been theory. Now let me show you the 2 times the world tried to reach the summit and fell. Failure number 1, yaws. Yaws is a disfiguring bacterial skin disease. In the 1950s, WHO went after it with everything. Penicillin, mass treatment campaigns, tens of millions of people treated. It should have worked, but it didn't, and the reason is chapter 7. Yaws can sit in your body latent, no symptoms, nothing to see. The teams went village to village looking for skin lesions, treating everyone they could see and moved on. For the first 10 years, they barely screened at all. When they finally ran blood tests across the population, they found it. An enormous hidden reservoir of silent, symptom-free infection they had walked straight past. People with no lesions who could relapse and become infectious again after the treatment teams had already gone home and declared the village clear. The campaign was, in the encyclopedia's words, futile. Not because the drug failed. Penicillin worked perfectly, but they could not see the disease. Failure number 2, and this is enormous. In 1955, the World Health Organization committed to eradicating malaria. Globally, not control, eradication, the whole planet. They had 2 miracle weapons, DDT for the mosquito and chloroquine for the parasite. And at first it worked spectacularly. Sri Lanka down to 17 cases, whole regions cleared. Then biology fought back on 2 fronts at once. The parasite evolved resistance to chloroquine, helped along by our own sloppiness by half doses and incomplete treatment that bred resistant strains. And the mosquito evolved resistance to DDT. The weapon stopped working. And in 1969, the World Health Organization formally gave up. It abandoned the goal of eradication and downgraded it officially on the record back to control. 14 years, enormous money, and the world walked back down the ladder. Understand what that means. The ladder is not a one-way climb. You can fall. Sri Lanka's 500,000 cases in 1969 wasn't an accident. They were the local face of a global retreat. And here is the part that still makes me smile grimly. India launched its national malaria eradication program in 1958. The eradication goal is long dead. India today aims for elimination by 2030. And India's leprosy program is still officially called the National Leprosy Eradication Program, while its actual target is elimination. The confusion isn't just in your head, it's printed on the letterhead. After all that, when is it worth gambling on the summit? 2 gates, biology, then money. Gate number 1, biology. You already know the tests because you have now met all three. Can you see every case? That's surveillance. That's yours. Have you got the tool that actually interrupts transmission and keeps working? That's malaria. That's resistance. And is the germ human only? That's herd immunity. That's rabies. Smallpox passed all three gift wrapped. Human only, an unmissable rash, a cheap one-shot heat stable vaccine, and an R naught of 5, so 80% was enough. Smallpox, frankly, was a soft target. We were lucky. How rare is that luck? In 1993, the International Task Force for Disease Eradication reviewed more than 90 diseases and judged 6 eradicable with the tools of the day. 6 out of 90. Gate number 2, money. Smallpox cost about $300 million. It returns over $1 billion a year forever, a benefit of cost ratio of roughly 159 to 1. Polio has cost more than $21 billion since 1988 and it is still not done. Because eradication is a mortgage. Enormous payments now and you only stop paying if you actually finish. Control is rent, cheaper this year, forever. And as malaria found out, if you take the mortgage and fail, you have paid the enormous payments and you still owe the rent. So where does this field actually stand? Nowhere unanimous. 4 live fights. 1. Is it even worth the money? Cochrane reviewed mass deworming, a tablet for every child in an endemic area. The finding little or no effect on average weight, hemoglobin, cognition or school performance. Economists looking at the same programs found real long-run gains in income. Same drug, same data, opposite policy. Number 2, malaria. Should we try again? In 2019, the WHO's own advisory group ran the models and said, not with the tools we have. Even at best, 11 million cases in Africa in 2050. They refused to set a target date. Weeks later, the Lancet Commission published it is eradicable by 2050 with $2 billion a year more. Same year, same evidence, opposite verdicts, and both of them remember 1969. Number 3, measles. Why haven't we even tried? You already know why. 95% everywhere forever. Measles passes every other test. Human only, unmissable rash, superb vaccine. It fades on arithmetic alone. The barrier isn't the virus, it's us. Number 4, TB and HIV, the reservoir. Roughly 1.7 billion people, about a quarter of humanity, carry latent TB. Silent, invisible, waiting. HIV writes itself into the human genome. You cannot eradicate what you cannot see and cannot reach. For these, control is not a failure of ambition. With today's tools, it is the honest ceiling. Which brings us back to Birmingham. Smallpox is eradicated. It is not extinct. Live variola virus still sits in 2 freezers, 2 WHO authorized laboratories, one at the CDC in Atlanta, one at Vector in Kosovo, Russia. The world has argued about destroying them for 40 years. That is the 4th rung and no human pathogen has ever reached it. Eradicated means gone from nature. Extinct means gone, full stop, including the freezer. Janet Parker died in 1978 of a disease that had already vanished from the world. That gap is not a technicality, it cost her her life. 4 words. Control, you are holding it down. Let go and comes back. Ask Sri Lanka. Elimination, you have stopped it. Here, not everywhere. Keep guarding the door. Eradication, you have stopped it everywhere forever. You may finally stand down. It has happened twice. Extinction, even the freezer is empty. It has happened never. And underneath all 4, one number. 1 minus 1 over R naught. That is how much of humanity you have to reach. So the next time a headline tells you a disease has been eliminated, ask the 3 questions. Eliminated where? Eliminated to 0 or the threshold? And how would we know? If it's only eliminated, keep vaccinated. Smallpox is the only disease we have ever been allowed to stop vaccinating against. That's all from my side. If you have enjoyed the video and learned from it, please like and comment on this video and share this with your friends and your colleagues. If you want more videos like this, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you.